So this maamer, again, is very extremely technical. It's a direct quote from the Alter Rebbe. In Pratim and Madregis, so we'll try and figure it out. And we see a very powerful hira at the end of the maamer. Okay, so where are we up to? In the middle of base. Let's just review what we're talking about. So that Tzemach Tzedek says that Oiri is Torah and Yishi is mitzvahs levushim. To understand that, he quotes here the whole maamer directly word for word from the Alter Rebbe, who is explaining the difference between Torah and mitzvahs based on, so far, we're exploring, understanding the pasuk v'chochma me'ayin timotze. Namely, ayin is a level of keser. That's how he explains the pasuk hayesh havai bekirbeinu im ayin. The deeper meaning of the pasuk is which level of alikus is invested in us. Havaya, which is chachma, or ayin, even higher, the gili keser. So what is the inyan? That ayin, as we just said, is keser, and it's called no thing because it, in fact, defies definition. Chachma is already gilui, but what is it? It's the gilui of the ayin. Chachma reveals this truth of the Eibishter's absolute exclusivity and beyond all limits. So the chachma may ayin timotze, the ayin emerges in chachma. That's a new h'tשכ, a little bit. In the way Chassidus usually teaches it, usually it's ma'ayin timotze, that chachma comes from keser. Here, timotze means that keser is present and found and manifest. This truth is conveyed to us, to creation, to us, therefore, through the gilui chachma. That's why chachma is called koyach ma, because ma already is muhus, also a new h'tשכ in koyach ma, as we explained yesterday. So chachma is revealing the truth that it becomes reality for and known by creation. So that's keser is ayin for us because keser per se is concealed, transcendent. Doesn't come in the way of hischalkus. Makif, the transcendent, the infinite, defies division, transcends division. Whereas chachma, which is already a gilui, chachma is an articulated statement in a very nebular way. To be sure, chachma is the nekuda, but it's still an articulation. It's an articulation of the truth of elikus, of ein mulvadoi. An articulation means oiris in kelim. It means it's chalkus. In a nebular potential kind of way, but nonetheless, it's already present in chachma. What the Moishe he gave, if you're following me, we're just going down the page and restating the maamer. So we're up to number 11 in the text as we're explaining, reviewing the maamer. So this is like the nefesh, which is all to explain Torah and mitzvahs. Torah is mitzvahs and makif, and Torah is pnimius. That's the point he's saying now. Keser versus chachma. Keser makif, chachma is pnimius. So we find this also b'nefesh ha'adam. And here the makif al-lavushim, the koiches pnimim, are the various faculties of the soul that are invested and tailored to the various parts of the body. The mind, the physical brain to understand, the eye to see, the ear to hear, and so on. That's chachma. It comes in oipnimi, bischalkus, chachma, chesed, netzach. Therefore, it's called mozim. It is in my innards. It is in Perek Tanya at the end. So that's food. It goes by pnimius. That thing in a what of chachma. Oir. It implies, well, in this case, certainly, keli. It certainly implies revelation. So on some subtle level, there is keli, no matter how high the oir is. But Keser is, he says, Inyan Atzmi, it's Behelem, and Keser is like analogous to the Levush, which transcends. For the Levush, a garment can cover the entire body equally. That was the end of the first paragraph. Now the second paragraph, let's start again. We didn't make much headway, so let's begin. Yeah? It's very dense and, again, Kabbalistically geographical. וזהו עניין שורש התורה והמצוות. מבוא במשנה חסידים, the גימל פרקים, the נצח וההוד, the עתיק. So the three levels. So if he mentions like two within one. Netzach and Hoid of Atik. Just remember, what is he saying here? I'm a Gil student, still insistent on understanding something. So we've got to tell him something. So what are you going to tell him? You say that again in simple English. Gimel Prakim, the Netzach, Hoid, the Atik. So Atik, first some Hebrew words. That Atik is Pnimis HaKesed. Atik is where God expresses his desire for creation. Now, in that desire, although what dominates, I'm a Gil student that's listening very patiently. Thank you very much. Okay, keep on talking. What's this Natzach and Hoid business? You got that? Atik is the expression, the Kesed. It's called crown metaphorically. It's the overarching motive or expression of a God's, not so much motive, but agenda in creation. That's what's articulated as not at length in the previous Maimar. Now, although there, what's expressed fundamentally is the desire, the motive for creation, nonetheless present latently are all of the factors of creation, namely all of the attributes that will emerge later down the line in the process of the articulation, realization of the purpose. So already in a nebular potential form in Atik are all of the properties that the good Lord will choose to manifest to create the world that he has chosen to create. And hence all the spheres are there, all of the various attributes, the system, the divine system that will emerge in terms of a clearly identifiable structure only down the road. Tzimtzum, Atzilus, so the process of contracting or screening the original desire to make room for, okay, you want it, and make it happen. So we have to put the desire aside, as it were, and get down to the brass tacks, the business of making the dira. Well, that's a whole system based on numbers, a thing called numbers. With the numbers, it's 10, and it's a whole geschäft. The dira b'tachtonim already articulated there in the word, I want a dir b'tachtonim, already implied there and implicit is tachten with all of its limitations as he has chosen to conceive of it. And it's all based in a system of 10. As the reader of Genesis no doubt will be struck by. The 10 utterances of creation. Actually, there are 9, but Bereshis is also, because Bereshis is Chochmah. Bereshis Namin Naimuhu. And Bereshis says the Targum, B'chuchmasa. So that's not considered as one of the 9 because that's within the process. That's the potential first stage, Chachma. So everything is relative. So all of this exists in a much more subtle way. All the Mashalim Chassidus for the Gacheles and the Eish and the Gacheles to explain how something can be there but not expressive, but still present. Many Mashalim Chassidus for that conundrum. It's there but not expressive. That's the right word. And there's different levels of that bittul. Different levels of the presence and the bittul. So I understand that in computers is a good example for this. When you hit the delete button, so it's deleted. It's deleted from the screen, obviously, but hasn't disappeared. It just recedes, and then to a very subtle, deep place within the whatever the term would be. And of course, that's the forensic, they're able to recover these things to a degree. Even delete. The impression, the reshima is still there, because it comes ultimately from this pure electricity state that defies any kind of articulation, and then starts to rapidly emerge as a printed word on your screen. But it's a whole process from the pure energy of electricity in your phone to that final image on the screen. If you understand how this works, which I don't really, but these are good mushalim for the spheres and their emergence. The emes is the best marshal to the person, because he's made in the image of God. So that's what this employs. So what did we just say now? What did we just say? What the quote just said, that what? To understand this, kihine. Well, he's in mid-sentence. Let's start it again. So the Gimel, as it calls in Prakim, of Netzach Haid, of Atik, that tells us that we're talking Atik, we're talking the divine desire. Netzach and Haid tells us the divine desire as it's now given to implementation, which requires Netzach and Haid, as explained in Tanya, famous in the Geras HaKodesh. The Alter Rebbe, it's the first and only place like this, where he illustrates B'nefesh Adam, all of the spheres, Lamaila, in terms of communicating something to a child. How you need Netzach and Haid, you got to overcome the resistance the father has because the kid is not really interested. And Haid, you got to you say this bonding. Haid teaches the bittul that is required to get down to his world, etc., etc. So all of this exists in a very subtle, latent way. I'm just saying this now because then when you learn Chassidus, you can't, every time a word is said, think of everything you know about that word. You'll never go anywhere. So it has to become a word to some degree. It has to become a word. It's a word that represents. What it represents, I once learned. It's somewhere in my head. But at the same time, and at some level, it can't just be words. You have to have the big picture always hovering in anything we're learning, so that the context, what are we talking about? As it becomes disembodied levels and mises and dargis, how many gods do you have? Okay, so what does he say? There's a Netzach and Haid of Atik, Amislabish, where Kabbalah language now, B'yid Gimel Chivarte Da'arich Anpin. Literally, the 13 white places or whiteness of Arich Anpin. Arich Anpin is, of course, the low. We know this. Arich Anpin is the lower level of Keser, correct? So the descent now. So in Arich, it's the skull, friends, as we explained yesterday. Then there's the hairs that project. So Veheim. So these are Gimel Chivarta. This is the white. The whiteness implying a bligvul rotzen. Arich is rotzen. I want a dir betachtoinim. This is a super rational atmisdike desire that defies all comprehension. Then there isn't even comprehension yet. It hasn't emerged yet. It only comes down the road. It's there latently. Akaponim. So that's what the whiteness of Arich Anpin is. This great, powerful gilu of the rotzen of the Eibishter. Clear? Trying to make this understandable. And they are then in turn invested in 613 pathways. These are the mitzvahs. These are the siders. And from which level? It seems to be, he's adding like and, not sure and, because really defining. And from the empty space between one hair and the other, that's the chivata, that's the whiteness, that's the Arich Anpin.
Well, look at Tahara 14, please.
Tzorech Ink, I don't know if their question is my question. I don't know, they say Tzorech Ink Ktas. I don't know if they may have another problem, which is a real problem, mine is not. But anyway, thank you for that. Okay. Because they're putting number 14 on the word Haponoi, they have a problem with that. My problem is generally just that's what it is. Why is it make it sound like it's another Indian? I don't know. Let's go further. So we're tracing this down in Kabbalistic language. We're tracing down the divine revelation. So we went from Atik to Arich and now to where? Tatzilis. And from there, Abba, Ve'ima, Chachma, and Bina receive the Gilui, as it were, right? Technical geography. So far, so good. You're representing everybody because no one else is responding. If it's a particular question. Yeah, thank you.
You want to know if we understand?
Yes. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay. Let's plow ahead. It gets denser, more cryptic. So we just descended now, traced the divine Gilui from the Atik to Adich, the Sidus, the projected hairs, the Tzayag Mitzvahs, that's the Rotzon Elyon. And that's invested in Chachma and Bina, which is beginning of Atzilus. Now, Beginning Atzilus, he wants to point out here that this is a big Yeridah. That Atzilus, Ava Pishalikus, even though Atzilus is a likus, it's not creation, it's godliness. Moreover, it's the source of creation, not part of it. Nonetheless, since Atzilus becomes the source, the stiflest of manifestation, I think that's Balikvul, limited manifestations. That's a definition of the Riba Yishtalshes Dabiyah. He puts Atzilus in there. We're talking about Atzilus. 1 second. Whoa. Atzilus, even though it's a likus and it's the marker to Bria. Yeah, that's the point he's saying. Since it's the source, answer my question, he's saying it's the source of, you think Biyah would come, not Abiyah. You understand what I'm asking? But okay, I don't have a clear answer, but anyway, but from Klal beginning, we'll get the idea generally. So even though it's the market for finite revelations through the Ribu Yishtalshus, the whole process of descent and Tzimtzum, which gives rise to the Abiyah, Atzilus included because it's a Sherish market, we get the idea. So nonetheless, it's incomparable to the Atzmius of Alikus. So there's godliness. Atzmius is not called godliness. Atzmius is the source, the Etzem. So therefore, in order for the Gilui Atzmi to be revealed in Atzilus, it requires a profound symptom. That's why Atzilus only receives from the Leivon Elyon, the Chivarte Darichanpin, through the Sidus, which implies a very limited revelation. The analogies to a hair, first of all, in its physical appearance, it's just a sliver of a projection from a source. So it's only a ha'ada. Another thing is, even stronger, when he cuts it, doesn't feel pain. Why? Because there's very little life force expressed in it. It's projecting from the head, but not from the etzim of the mayach, which remains completely concealed. The halacha is that if the membrane around the brain of an animal, kosher animal, is pierced, it's treif. So it has to be closed. So therefore, that means that the sidus are not getting directly from the Atzmi Samech, that's the skull. The membrane for us is 2 levels, and the skull, which completely conceal the brain. It only has a small glimmer of nourishment. So Moishe, Eibishter tells Moishe, so I will separate literally from the spirit that is upon you, and I'll give it to the 70 elders. Because the 70 elders are in the Muchrim Harbe Madrekis from Kinas Moishe. They are much lower than the level of Moishe. V'nikra b'chinas Atzilus. That's referring to the Skenim. So the Skenim are the level of Atzilus, and he's saying Moshe Rabbeinu is rooted higher. That's v'nikra goes not on Moshe, but on them. That's the point that he's saying. It's got to be a great tzimtzum to produce even Atzilus. Clear? General idea we get. Okay, let's continue. V'zehu inyan ha-mitzvahs. So we want to explain the difference between mitzvahs and Torah, makif and pnimi, and so far the makif is higher, the pnimi is lower. Mitzvahs are rotzen elyon and Torah is chochma. So where mitzvahs rooted? Shem is rotzen elyon. That's arich, that's keser, that's chivarta. That is the whiteness of the skull. That's the source of mitzvahs. That's the rotzen, the pure rotzen, which articulates then in the 613 commandments. That's gilui asidus. That's the sidus emerging the various particular commandments. Is that clear? All right. So the whiteness is the rotzen, the alien, which is the makiv. And what is Torah? That's the sidus that project from there, not connected as the chivarta is to the atzmiyas hamayach, tremendous simsum, eclipsing the atzmiyas hamayach. So far, so good, more or less. Yeah. How's this one by heart? That's being good. Good avodah.
By heart.
What's that?
By heart. So it's so hard. It's just words.
She say it's easier. Okay, so add it up. And this is what talis and tzitzis are. So talis is the makif, obviously, and tzitzis are the sidus. So talis corresponds to the leiven elyon, the supernal white light. That's what it means. The supernal whiteness, which is synonymous with Shem in Gimel Chivarte Darech Hanpin. That is the 13. Again, 13 has to do with Echod. So the 13 whitenesses of Darech Hanpin, and that's the talis itself. That's why it's made from the wool of sheep. Why? So it's known in the Inyan Akvasim, but you send this to Ukut Torah. Pashas Ember, Karbon is there. So look at the word keves. Shakach made up Chinas Kesed. Chaf is the Rosh Tevis indicates Kesed. There's other Saif Rosh Tevis. There's other connections. This escapes me now. That's the Chaf. Vashin, the Reim is the Bechinas Chagas. So the Shin, which has 3 branches, 3 strokes, so that corresponds to the level of Chachma, and so it has the Tiferes of Arich Hanpin. It's all Makif. Ubeis, that's the word Keves, yeah? Chaf, not in order. Kesev actually can be written both ways. Sometimes it's called Kvasim, sometimes it's called Ksav, Kesev. At any rate, so the Chaf is Kesev, that's what good, and the Shin is the 3 strokes of the Shin, Chagas of Arich Hanpin, and the Beis of Bchinas Chachma Ubina. So why is Beis Chachma and Bina? B'Chachma Yibana Bayis. Because with Chachma you build a Bayis, and a Bayis is Beis. So how was the Beis come into being with the Chachma? You can't have a plan without, you can't have a detailed plan without the general idea, otherwise meaningless. In the words of the Zohar, the Trei Rein Le Misparshin, 2 friends that never separate. So the Beis, which goes on Bayis, Bina b'Chachma Yivna Bayis. So everything is there, and the Bayis, the Chachma, and Bina. So therefore, what? So that's the what of the talus, which is made of what? Of lamb's wool, sheep's wool. So therefore, B'chinas Keves, from this level, Hainu. summarizing it, the net result of the word keves is the gimel kavin, that's the shin, bezah, which exists within zah, shalamata me'arich anpin, which is lower than the rotzen. Let's just go back to what did he say? Let's try to learn this together. So let's learn it together. Peshin is chagas de arich anpin. De arich anpin. So I said before that the three levels are that's zor, that's chagas is zor, that is within arich anpin. Now he says behind the prin keves hain prin gimel kavim bezor shalamata me arich anpin. It seems the next stage, therefore, is, it doesn't articulate it, that this is all invested. Lo yadeh. Okay, we're going to go further, just to revisit it. And this is what the pasuk says, V'aksovim hifrid Yaakov. So Yaakov separated the sheep. This is the keves or the kesev. This is the amshocha lamata. But this is all to point to a makiv. This is the talis, not the tzitzis. Let's keep on reading. It's from the sheep, right? So through it, that's descended. This gilui, this through karbonas, they are elevated to this source. The karbonas are the, as explained, the tzimtzum of the malachim. That are rooted in the Pnei Arya and the Pnei Shod of the Mekava, and they fell in Shvidas HaKelim. And through Karbonas, they fall into physical animals down here, etc. So through the Karban, they get ascended. Shem Sag Shalifnei Ashvira B'chinas HaKudim. Okay, it's Mamash Kabbalah. So we all know, again, it's talking about the sheep. It's HaKudim. Akudim Nakudim Uvrudim, that Yaakov tells Rachel and Leah, he describes his dream at the Malachim, were bringing the sheep from Lavan to him. It's all very mystical and strange account in the Torah. So there are three kinds of sheep: Akudim ringed, Nakudim speckled, and Vrudim. Vrudim is like a belt and belted. That's how they. So akudim is pnimis hakeser. Akud means all fastened. So all of the oiris are fastened in one keli, complete oneness. Nukudim points fragmented as shviras hakeli, and vrudim also implies sifting and clarifying. That is, and therefore new unity is achieved, a belted unity. This is Atzilus. This is an integrated unity of separate Eiris and Kalim, where the process of Dirib Tachtenim begins on a subtle level. So, Lifnei, Akudim is the Gili of Pnimis HaKeser, before the Shavira. Remember, it's the level of Keser, the post Shavira as well. But in general, Akudim are the Eiris Lifnei HaShavira, and the Kudim is the result of Shvira Sakelim of Rudim. And what you're saying here, the Shem Sag, so Shem Sag is Bina. There's different ways to, we gave out a sheet of this, you all have it in your files, right? The different ways that Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke can be spelled out. The Yud is always uniform, it's Yud Vav Dalet, but the Hey can be spelled Hey Yud, Hey Aleph, or Hey Hey. The Vav can be spelled Vav Yud Vav or Vav Aleph Vav. So it then lends itself to all kinds of variables. Shem Sag, Shem Ma, Shem Ban, and Shem Ab. In Beis, of course, the biggest number, it's all Yud, all Yud. The difference being, and look at the Sidurim, I think some of them here, the Svadish Sidurim have, on top of each name, Hashem's name is mentioned exactly how the spelling is, because It's the 10 spheres with Kivavke, but every time, and then depending on the context, which sphere is being revealed here, what dominates? That's the miloi, the filler. What the colors and dominate? What's the ikaram shachana? What's chach? What's bina? So Shem Sag is bina because 63. It's a combination of in the miloi. It's not one uniform miloi in Aleph and the Yud. We'll do the math. At any rate, conclusion is that it's inyan of bina. Now he just says here what? So through karbonos we elevate the sparks to their source. What's the source? Shemsag bina lifnei ashvira. The shvira doesn't happen in bina, but the shvira happens in the midas. And that's also synonymous, a level of akudim, which is pre-shvira. Level of akudim, this unified level. So through avodah, we then bring unity to a fragmented world. There's such a unity that exists in the akudim, but this time it's threaded through h'tשכ creation. All right, sorry. We'll stop here. Today's Thursday.